Hi guys, Ollie from On Your Game here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about does the risk of injury increase as we age? I'm going to give it 30 seconds just for some people to join and then I'll get into the video. Hope you're all well today. Cool. Okay, so I've had a lot of people recently who are worried about the increasing risk of injury as we age. Obviously, as we get older, we tend to find that injuries increase, which we're going to get into. Not only do injuries increase, but also the time of recovery, and also per session, or if you're going to play a sport, per sporting event. You tend to feel like you're slowing down and you're not being as explosive as you used to be, which I'm going to get into as well. But the premise I wanted to start off with is that even though we are getting older, this doesn't necessarily mean that the risk of injury will also increase for lots of different reasons, and there's lots of different things that we can do to make sure that the risk of injury doesn't increase as we get older as well. There's been lots of older people who've done some remarkable things which a lot of young people couldn't do. I'll give the example is recently a person named Al Hanna, who's a 69-year-old man, managed to climb up the southern summit of Mount Everest. Obviously, it's an incredible feat for someone of any age, but they managed to do it at 69 years old. Obviously, there's lots of things that went into that preparation and how they were able to do it as well. But this is my way of saying, even though that we are getting older, we shouldn't have to think about decreasing the amount of exercise we're doing. Equally, we shouldn't have to think about the risk of injury as well. Even though there are lots of different characteristics between a 30-year-old human body and a 70-year-old human body, there are still lots of ways we can reduce the risk of injury. Now, one thing I want to get into is I'm going to be explaining something called a Masters athlete. I'll be using that word quite a lot during this Facebook Live. Basically, a Masters athlete is an athlete who competes at a particular sport to a high level, who we usually see is over the age of 35. However, this age limit is dependent on the different sports, but the usual age bracket will be at 35 and above for that. So first things first, I wanted to go into what are some of the physical changes that happen as we get older. Now, the main ones are going to be a loss of muscle mass. We are also going to have a reduction in our type 2 muscle fibers, which are our fast twitch muscle fibers, which will obviously slow us down. Our fast twitch, as it's in the name, is suggesting that these are our fast muscles. So these are all the muscle fibers that are going to help us run quicker, be more explosive, jump higher, and they actually decrease as we get older. And we also find that overall we get a loss of muscle mass as well, which can be down to lots of reasons, but the main one being that we have a decrease in the amount of testosterone within us. Obviously, then because of that, we won't be having the same muscle building capabilities as we would when we were younger. We also, because of these two reasons, then notice a loss of strength, and we notice loss of power as well. And also, hi Catherine, we're just talking about the loss of certain abilities as we get older. We also notice a loss of flexibility as well. We also notice an increased tendon stiffness, which basically adds up to what we'll see as a decrease in sporting ability. Now, we could look at these individually as a negative thing, but individually we can take all of these points and find ways that we can reduce the risk of injury, even though these things are happening as well. Many of these changes are thought to be exacerbated by disuse, for instance. So as we get older, we tend not to perform to the same amount that we would do when we were younger. Maybe we're participating in sport or whatever activity it may be, less and less. Now, the less we compete in any given sport, if we're going to the gym or if we're doing running, the less chance our body has to adapt to the the changes that should be made to play in a particular sport. So especially with muscle loss, what we'll find is if you aren't using the muscle, obviously it's going to atrophy, and it's not going to be at the same level as it was before we stopped working out. But also what we can find is that does increase, so the atrophy levels increase as we get older as well. So this means that if you stay active for a long time across your lifespan, the declines that you're experiencing are going to be markedly less than if you stop exercising completely. And also, more importantly, if you start exercising in your older years, we can find that there are some reverses to these changes that are taking place as well. So that's some of the physical changes that can happen due to us competing as we're getting older, or us, just living our lives, working out as we get older as well. But there's also some nervous system changes that take place as well as we get older. Some of the changes include a loss of nerve cells into the brain and spinal cords. We also see the atrophy that I was talking about earlier within the brain and spinal cord. We get a slowing down of nerve cell transmissions through the body, and we get a loss of alpha motor neurons, which basically they're the ones that stimulate our type 2 muscle fiber contractions, which are our fast twitch muscle fibers. So alongside losing the fast twitch muscle fibers that we have, we also, the nerves that innervate the fast twitch muscle fibers, we also get a loss of those as well as we get older. Now, what my point is here is we can decrease the amount that happens with use. So the more we use our muscles, especially like the fast twitch muscle fibers as we get older, the less that deduction is going to take place, and the quicker that will be, and the more explosive we'll be. So it's all about use. We pretty much need to keep on using the muscles. We need to keep on using our abilities. And then because of that, we're then going to get that reverse in symptoms, and also we're going to get a reduction in the amount that we're losing these fast twitch muscle fibers as well. So the collective implications of all of these changes typically result in decline in cognitive processing and also mental functioning as well. Furthermore, they can also present in physical changes, which we will see with a mixture of the physical and nervous system changes in terms of things like loss of coordination, balance, and also neuromuscular control as well, which I will be getting into. But the point of this is also to say that with these losses in coordination, balance, and neuromuscular control, we are then going to increase the risk of injury as we get older, okay? So the point of this, we need to keep on working, keep on using all of the muscles. That way we're not going to see these decreases, okay? Now, however, when we compare the physical changes to the nervous system changes, we found that exercise has been found to have a preventative effect on the nervous system changes, whereas with the physical changes, it's just going to slow down the physical changes by doing exercise. The nervous system changes, we have found that can put a complete preventative effect on the degradation of the nervous system, of the atrophy of the spinal cord and the brain. Now that you've got a bit of an understanding of what happens to the body as you get older, it would stand to reason that these changes might make older athletes more susceptible to injuries. But is that really the case? Do injury rates within sport increase as we get older? There's been a number of studies that have been looking at this answer, and there's a couple of different answers that you can take from this. First and foremost, the older athletes competing in like elite level team sports do appear to have a slightly higher risk of injury when comparing to younger athletes. For example, within football, handball or rugby, athletes over the age of 30 will be having a slightly higher risk of injury rates compared to people who are under the age of 25. But with this being said, there's a big caveat because of something that we call a previous injury indicator. So what we'll find is with most of these injuries that they've already had a previous injury to the same site, or it could have been a previous injury to another body part, which has then affected this particular body part that's got injured. And is that really us aging, or is that the fact that as we get older we just pick up more injuries, and then therefore it's going to take longer to heal because we've already got pre-existing injuries there as well? You could simply say that older athletes have had more time to accumulate these injuries, but on the other hand we have older athletes who participate in sports in different age classes, and we find that different sports actually have different injury rates as well. And we find that these masters that I was speaking about earlier, the people who are above the age of 25, do not appear to be at a greater injury risk than their young counterparts in events such as track and field, running, sprinting, jumping or throwing. It's tending to be the contact sports that we will mainly see a higher risk of injury when you get older, as opposed to some non-contact sports, as I just mentioned. Cool. So if you're looking to compete into your 60s, if you're older, then I would not worry about future risk of injury. As I've just explained, there's lots of different ways that we can help to prevent this. The main one being just competing. We find that just being able to be involved in activity is going to reverse some of those changes, especially at the neuromuscular level. And there's a growing body of evidence that's clearly showing that older athletes who compete in more explosive sports, like team sports, sprinting, jumping, are actually going to be helping themselves rather than impairing in their ability. Okay. However, with this being said, there are obviously some injuries which we see quite a lot in the clinic, which will happen as you get older as well. And the main one that I tend to see is a tendinopathy. This is where the tendon becomes inflamed. So we usually see like an Achilles tendonitis, and this is due to lack of blood flow into the tendon as we get older. So therefore it's going to take longer to heal because we aren't getting that same amount of blood flow to the area. But as I said, the best way to combat most injuries is just to stay active, is just to continue performing, because otherwise if we stop, then these effects both physiologically and also at the nervous level are going to rapidly increase. Okay. So what I'm going to go on to next is an in-depth look at the role that balance plays as an aging athlete. First of all, human balance is just simply defined as the ability of a person not to fall over. And in this manner, it encompasses the ability to maintain posture during any dynamic activity, just as sport would, you need balance for sport, obviously. And as simple as it sounds to keep your balance, there's lots of complex things that happen for us to keep our balance. There's lots of factors that are involved. First of all, mobility restraints. This can refer to any limitations on joint mobility that may impact your ability to perform and move effectively. We've also got stability limitations. This refers to an inability to stabilize a joint or limb effectively during movement, which can be driven by limitations in muscle strength, which can then lead to a loss of control of movement. We've got nervous system and sensory deficits, so this can be anything from a discord between the nervous and sensory systems, the muscular system. An example would be limitations in neuromuscular control, and also functional declines in both our hearing and our eyesight as well, which will then make balancing harder, obviously. And also we've got cognitive processing issues, so this just refers to the decline in our ability to critically think, and our ability to how quick we can make these decisions as well. Obviously, a really good example would be if we're trying to step over, if we're on a set of stairs and we find that one step's larger than the others. For most of us, we can just readjust the foot and we can lift it up higher, but for someone with cognitive processing issues, that would be harder for them to do, and they would trip over the stairs, obviously. So what I'm going to do is talk about what's the best ways that we can improve balance and also improve our ability to perform a sporting event. Now, the main one is going to be strength training. Obviously, the amount of muscle that we have and also the amount that we're performing exercise are both going to determine our joint stability and also then therefore our balance as well. With strength training, we're not only putting on muscle, but we're also using the brain to think about the movements that we're doing, and therefore increasing our nervous system's ability to perform. And as a result of this, we have to see strength training as a must, especially as we get older. We also see that proprioception drills, so for instance single leg balance, or like using a balancing ball, or lots of hopping, plyometric training is going to be fantastic as we get older, because we have to think on our feet, we have to make split decisions. So I would definitely recommend some plyometric training as you get older as well. And the other one's quite basic, but also always performing a warm-up before we start any exercise. We know that as you get older, your flexibility declines as well, which can result in loss of range of motion, which can then further limit our balancing abilities, and then therefore make you more susceptible to certain injuries. So really good warm-up is essential, making sure that we're warming up using dynamic stretches, static stretches for at least 5 to 10 minutes before any warm-up. It's going to be essential to mitigating those injury risks that we have. What I would suggest if you were to do a proper warm-up would be light cardiovascular activity, so some walking or some running for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then we can work on some mobility, so we can focus on the hips, the shoulders, the spine, and the lower limbs as well. We want to be doing that for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to get into our movement preparation. So if we're doing any heavy lifting, we want to prepare for that by doing lighter lifts using the exact same path. So if we're doing a bench press, work on really low level weight first, and then build up into that higher weight. And then gradually we want to move into, if we're going to do some jogging, start off with a really light jog, or if we're going to play a sport, for instance, if we're playing football, gradually move into those sport specific drills where you're able to really focus on the movement patterns that you'll be performing in the game, which will help that nervous system react much quicker, and also therefore reduce the risk of injury as well. So my take home message from all of this is, as we get older, our body does go through changes both physiologically and also in the nervous system. Due to this, however, we should not be afraid to perform activity. It should just make our roles, I guess our roles would have to change, and we would have to perform slightly differently to maybe how we perform when we're younger. As I mentioned, we'll start with a proper warm-up, working more on strength training, making sure that we're using, if we're participating in a particular sport, using those mechanisms that we'll be performing in the sport beforehand, all going to help to reduce those risks of injury. And yeah, thank you for listening, guys. If you've got any questions, please pop them down below. Yeah, thank you very much. Right, thank you very much. I will speak to you at next month.